Behind Great Yarmouth's cheery seaside facade lies a grisly, gruesome history that still haunts the town today.
Come with us to an historic building located on South Quay, Great Yarmouth.
It is now the Elizabethan House Museum. It was built in 1596 during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I by local merchant Benjamin Cowper. This house was made famous by its connections to several high-status Yarmouth families, and in particular to its connection with the infamous Oliver Cromwell.
An English soldier and statesman, Cromwell was born in 1599. He led parliamentary forces in the English civil wars against the Royalists and was the self-proclaimed Lord Protector of England, Scotland and Ireland during the Republican Commonwealth.
Cromwell frequently visited his friend John Carter at his home in Great Yarmouth, and it would become a regular meeting place for parliamentarians during the Civil War. In fact, King Charles I's violent end was decided here at this very location.
King Charles I was executed by beheading on January 30th, 1649, outside the Banqueting House in Whitehall, London. The execution was a public spectacle with a large crowd witnessing the event. Charles was sentenced to death for treason and high crimes and his refusal to recognise the court's authority.
The building is rife with paranormal activity. There have been many frightening sightings of full-bodied apparitions in period dress roaming the dark historic rooms and hallways of the house.
Some of the ghostly apparitions are of children, and one is of a stern, matronly woman.
Disembodied footsteps are common throughout the building, and poltergeist activity has been witnessed many times. Some have experienced sudden drops in temperature. Others have heard unexplained voices in empty rooms.
Some of these spirits appear welcoming, but some definitely not. In 1349, there was an unwelcome visitor, the Black Death. Like most of Europe, Yarmouth was devastated by the plague. It was said that most of the plague victims were brought to St. Nicholas Church for burial.
It is also the resting place of those who were accused of witchcraft.
For this story, we need to go back to the year 1584. Two local women, Elizabeth Butcher and Joan Lingwood, were accused of witchcraft. They were executed at the site north of the town. According to parish records, their bodies were buried in St. Nicholas churchyard.
In 1645, the infamous Matthew Hopkins, the self-proclaimed witchfinder general, rode into Great Yarmouth at the request of the town council. They were terrified of allegations of dark, devilish, demonic happenings occurring in their town.
In September of that year, Hopkins started his investigations. Spiteful whisperings and pointed fingers were directed at some of the unfortunate individuals of the town.
Hopkins accused 2 men and 9 women of allegedly being involved in witchcraft. They were brought before the court.
6 of the accused women were found guilty and sentenced to death by hanging. However, just a few days after the trial, one woman, Joanna Lacey, was acquitted and freed.
In the dock, one of the women, Elizabeth Bradwell, confessed to performing image magic. This was the creation of wax images in the likeness of another for the purpose of their bewitchment and murder. She recalled how she thrust a nail into the head of a wax image that resembled a neighbour's child, John Moulton. Yet Elizabeth was soon to disclose something even darker to the court upon that day. She admitted to signing in her own blood a contract given to her by the devil.
The confession sealed her fate, and she would soon be swinging on the scaffold at the north of the town.
4 other women were also found guilty of witchcraft: Alice Cliswell, Elizabeth Dudgeon, Bridget Howard, and Margaret Blackburn. They were also sentenced to death by hanging.
Why were these women, and the 2 from 1584, buried at St. Nicholas churchyard? Traditionally, those condemned as criminals, including witches, would be buried in unconsecrated ground or at crossroads outside the village. These measures were designed to confuse the spirit, which would not be able to return and perform further devilish, ungodly acts. The famous witchcraft trials of 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts, also had a Yarmouth connection.
Great Yarmouth in Norfolk, England was home to William and Joanna Town, who got caught up in those famous Salem Witch Trials of 1692. William Town and Joanna Blessing were married at the Church of St. Nicholas in Great Yarmouth on March 25, 1620.
They left Great Yarmouth in 1637, settling in Salem, Massachusetts in 1640.
Accused of witchcraft, 2 of their daughters, Rebecca Nurse and Mary Esley, were both executed. Another daughter, Sarah Cloyce, was arrested on suspicion of witchcraft, but later released. She pressed charges for her unlawful arrest and the killing of her sisters, and received 3 gold sovereigns for each of them. In 1985, the television miniseries 3 Sovereigns for Sarah chronicled this event. Sarah was portrayed by the English actor Vanessa Redgrave. Come with us, if you dare, to the infamous Toll House Jail.
One of Britain's oldest prisons, this building has a dark, turbulent past. It was originally built as a merchant's house over 800 years ago. It later became a courtroom before becoming a town jail with a notorious dungeon.
Those incarcerated within its foul, fearful cells were smugglers, thieves, murderers, and those accused of witchcraft. Their grim reality was a life of punishment, torture, insanitary conditions, little food, and the very real threat of execution.
In 1645, the jail was used by Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins for his witch trials. This was where the accused were held before being executed.
Footsteps echo in empty corridors, doors suddenly slam, and disembodied, chilling screams and ghostly moans can be heard. Unseen hands have physically touched, grabbed, or pushed the unwary. Ghoulish apparitions appear, and extreme drops in temperature are felt.
Before the Second World War, most residents of Yarmouth lived in long, narrow passageways known as rows. These rows ran east to west between the river and the sea. The few main streets ran north to south. The rows date from medieval times, and there are around 150 of them.
In 1804, the rows were allocated a number to make them easier to identify. We are heading for number 95, Kitty Witch's Row.
As a row, it was much the same as any other rows, but it could boast the fact that it was the narrowest row, at around 28 inches wide at its narrowest point.
The origin of the name is not fully documented, and several explanations have been put forward. The most likely explanation relates to a possible Dutch origin. The Dutch regularly visited Great Yarmouth in medieval times. They came to attend the Herring Fair. This was the Dutch name for a house of bad repute.
Many rows had an inn or public house, and row 95 was no exception. There was a reference to row 95 having been the home of kitsch witches. These were women of ill repute, dressed in a grotesque and frightening manner, who would hound residents in order to fund their bawdy drinking sessions.
Some say that the row was named after the crabs in Breydon Water, locally known as kitty witches. In some places, the row was so narrow that you had to enter sideways and do an unusual crab-like walk, which we won't demonstrate. But perhaps the scariest thing about Great Yarmouth, apart from the tourists, is the old abandoned Waxworks Museum.
This museum was dubbed the world's worst waxworks museum because the waxwork models were so terrible. It achieved cult status because people couldn't wait to see just how bad they were.
Thank you for joining us on this tour of gruesome Great Yarmouth. Don't have nightmares.
If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe to the Brit Girls.